Well, good evening, everyone. On behalf of POW Post 4223 and the Jefferson Barracks POW-MIA Museum, welcome, and thank you all for coming. And many thanks to Norm and Post 4223 for letting us, for their most generous hospitality and letting us use the building. Possibly some of you, like me, assume that Americans captured by the path at Laos were eventually, those that survived were turned over to the North Vietnamese and were among those POWs that were released in 1973. As we will learn this evening, thanks to the extraordinary efforts of our guests, some of the things that we thought were so, sadly, were not always correct. It is an honor and a privilege for me to introduce to you Mr. Paul Clever, Mrs. Nita Clever, Copter Clever, and Mr. Bobby St. John from the Maximum Recovery Southeast Asia, or MRSEA. They have traveled all the way from Olive Branch, Mississippi to be with us and to brief us on their remarkable findings regarding our POWs and MIAs in Laos. And at this time, I would like to turn the proceedings over to Paul. Paul is the director of MRSEA. He is also an advisory. He's a member of the Jefferson Barracks POW-MIA Museum Advisory Board. And he is the son of Air Force Tech Sergeant Louis Clever, who went missing in action February 5th, 1969, when his EC-47, call sign Cap 72, was shot down over Laos. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Paul Clever.
It is such a privilege to be around people like mine. You know, I know the word went out a lot for people to come, but my feedback was the people that are going to be here are the people that need to be here and want to be here. So this is the perfect crowd. I appreciate every one of you coming. First of all, how many people know anything mentionable about Laos? You are above average in all respects. When you talk to the general population, they know nothing about Laos. It's not taught in school. So that's the key part of our topic tonight is Laos. I'm going to start out with why here, why now. You know, how does a person from Olive Branch, Mississippi become this guy that goes to Laos? You start out a small boy at your father's funeral that you don't understand. You know, 10 people died and there's 2 caskets. A small boy doesn't understand that. The reality of it was, the information they gave us was, we're sorry they're dead, trust us, go home, get on with your life. That's not emotional closure. You know, ideally they say, here are the remains of your loved one. We've identified it through skeletal, we've identified it through dental, we're sorry, thank you for your sacrifice. That's identification. Sometimes you have to satisfy with accounting, which is, we went to the crash site, we found some remains, but we couldn't identify them, but we did find a pistol. And on that pistol is a serial number. And we took that serial number and we matched it to the documents, and that pistol belonged to your loved one. So we know that if he had left the aircraft, he would have taken the pistol with him. Since we found it at the crash site, the possibility of him surviving the crash doesn't exist. We're sorry. Get on with your life. That's also emotional closure. But when they say, trust us, get on with your life, that starts the small boy in search of his father. We were playing a video on a loop which tells the story of how Nita and I went to Laos, found the crash site, recovered remains, brought them home. Of the remains we brought back, we identified 3 of the crew, and one of those was my father. That's identification. In May 2015, only 46 years later, we buried my father beside my mother, and that is emotional closure. We, the people that chose to come here tonight, in one form or another, understand that need for emotional closure. I want to recognize somebody in the room. Most of you already know her. Without this one person, none of this happens. The 7 identifications we had from the Camp 72, the work we're doing for POWs, the Alan Pittman search, none of this happens without this one person and her contribution to what we're doing. It's easy to say, oh, you're just going to Laos. Our last mission, one of our team members came back early with 4 broken ribs. We ended up at the business end of an AK-47 in a very precarious position from the provincial headquarters about what are you doing here, which NITA was able to negotiate us out of that whole problem. I ended up with heat exhaustion on this trip while we were going down to the Sempoy camp, and it was NITA who protected and took care of me and recovered me. So, needless to say, beyond language skills, beyond culture skills, we're talking about a strength in a person that is unique among unique. And there's no glamour in this. I have a beautiful wife who loves fashion. There is no glamour in the work we do, but she does it. Nika was awarded the Commander's Public Service Award from the U.S. Air Force for her outstanding achievement in supporting Air Force families. This is the 5th highest award the Air Force gives to non-Air Force employees. If you would take a moment and join in an ovation for Nika. That's why I'm here to talk to you tonight. No NITA, nothing. Part of our work, we call it the 1s and 2s. Now, we've sort of focused on the POWs and the MIAs. POWs being Americans that were in captivity beyond 1973 and left behind, which is going to be a key part of our topic tonight. Everybody says, oh, didn't they come home? What I'm saying is no. And why? In our 1s and 2s, one of the key things, we have several that we're researching. In the 2015 mission, we've actually had some progress, some good progress. This is Airman First Class Alan Pittman. Through the years, his rank changed. He's now Chief Master Sergeant Alan Pittman. He was killed in 1966 in Laos. He survived the bailout. He ended up getting shot. His body was buried. It was war, and very sad part of war. Where we're at now is, let's get Alan home. It's only been 50 years. Sadly, it's been 50 years. The JPAC actually identified Pittman's burial area, and they've been there several times. And these are cases, when I was looking through the documentation, thousands and thousands of documents. In reading this particular document, it's like, man, Alan should be home. I don't understand, with this good of intelligence, why isn't Alan home? What had happened, one of the 3 men that buried Pittman's body was a witness who took them to the burial area, and they said, here is where we buried Alan Pittman's body. I know it to be so because this tree was here, and that tree was there. I remember seeing the trees. This is the spot. And so JPAC dug the spot and found nothing. So then JPAC came back again and dug a bigger spot. And they also cleared the surface area of a much wider area looking for a discoloration in the soil. It's called a burial shaft. This, introducing the VIPs tonight, this is Delvin Pittman. This is Alan Pittman's brother. And he took the time to come down here, to see how things are going and to actually feedback. We're working together to get Alan home. And that's what it takes, is ownership of it. Hound dog on the cactus bush doesn't work. We all know this to be true. What Delvin and I are doing is he's like the right hook and I'm the left jab. And I think we're making some progress, don't you? We neither one expect a Christmas card from the Air Force or the U.S. government. We will get over it. So, we went to the Memphis family update. Mr. Pittman came down and they gave this information to the family. And graciously, Delvin said, here. At first he was like, who the heck are you? What? You do what? But we came to this place where, yes, maybe we can do something. And so I had this information and I'm looking at it. And you see how the trees are linear here? It's a rubber tree plantation. This was not a rubber tree plantation in 1966. This was the jungle. So I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, well, if our witness is standing here and he's in the middle of the jungle, I've been to the jungle. A lot of the people here have been to the jungle. In a distance from here to here, particularly from here to there, you cannot see a tree. Didn't make sense. But in this area to the right in 2013, Neith and I actually went and looked at the site firsthand. And what we noticed here was the ground in this area is very, very poor quality. The grass barely grows there, a tree won't grow there. In 1966, when you had dense jungle here and dense jungle here, this was like an interstate highway. So, testimony says that Alan was shot down near the base of the where the ground started to elevate, and then moved farther uphill. Do you move somebody through the dense jungle, or do you take them down to the interstate and move them up the interstate? Here's how the logic started to form. If you're standing on the interstate here, particularly in high ground, you can see this tree, and you can see this tree. I came to the conclusion that the witness, because this had been clear cut and small rubber trees had been put in place of a dense jungle, was simply on the wrong side. What Bobby and I did last December is we went to the site and we did some geometry. Measured out where this is where we buried Alan's body. Here's the stump. This one here took us a while to find. And then the stump up here, which I was like, no, Bobby, that can't be it. Yeah, you punched it. That's it. It was it. And then we did an inversion, which puts our witness on the ground that was clear on the interstate. I believe what we did is we found the mistake. Now, why are professionals working for JPAC and DPAA could not figure this logic out? I'm not sure. What am I to say? Some of them do great work, some of them. X marks the spot. So we go around to the interstate and we walk up. And we get where we're sure this is it, and we sit down. You know, because a lot of times people want to run around and get all crazy, when the smart thing to do is just sit down. Look. If I'm lying, I'm dying. 10 feet away from us. We found a mound. See the mound? 8.5 feet by 3.5 feet. Is anybody sort of like feeling a, whoa? There is no other mound like this anywhere in that area. When we excavated the first 8 inches, it was porous. And that being when you have a handful of clay, and this is red clay area, it's not uniform. Some of the structure inside there is lighter, and some of it's heavier. And over time, when it rains on packed clay, the water will seep in and erode out that light clay and leave the heavy clay like a honeycomb. Not only was it the upper 8 inches above ground, but another 8 inches, the first 8 inches digging below that. So to get that much erosion out of the clay would have taken a very long time. It had our attention. So here I am, and this was a mistake, and I have to learn. You know, I want to make mistakes. I thought, man, this is just too good at intelligence. We were planning to leave the next morning, and I said, we're going to push the extra day to dig this site. And the next day, it was about 10 o'clock when our friends popped through we were actually in a different area of the burial, you know, the site there. And a provincial headquarters officer and 2 militia people came popping through where we were at. One was carrying an AK-47, and the provincial officer was madder than hell. And when you're looking down, for me, you know, I'm married to an Asian wife. I've been to Asia. I've watched all the movies. I knew what to do. You squat down and you look like, you know, I'm not a threat to you. Now my buddy Bobby here, see Bobby doesn't have an Asian wife, and he hasn't spent a lot of time there in Asia. In fact, he's from Mississippi. And what you do in Mississippi, if someone walks up with an AK-47, you know, I'm like, yeah, dude, you go get us shot. So what we're doing is very, very complex. There is risk involved. Nita was able to negotiate to make everything work out all right in that. We promised that Laotian official we would leave Laos immediately. And we booked through that, we gone. We did not promise that Laotian official we wouldn't come back.
Oh, he asking, please don't tell anyone you give to me.
Oh yeah, they don't. We bought our way out of it. Don't tell anybody I took this money from you. I say communism's not all bad. It's not all bad. It's all about negotiating the price. Nita negotiated a doable price, and everything worked out just fine. Say now in America, maybe not. Communism, yeah. We'll have to edit that out. And looking at the image, this looks promising. In excavating now, gosh, I hope you can see this. It's a little clear up a little bit.
ครูจ๋า pointing west, east and west in the Asian
Oh,
culture.
yeah. In Asian custom, you bury somebody east-west, and the grave was immediately, you know, the mound that we found, immediate east-west. So, I wanted to show this image here. If you can see right here, you see this black? That's charcoal. And this is about, you can see my shovel here, so that charcoal's about 20 centimeters down, 25 maybe. This had been a hole that was dug, and I actually dug down to 50 centimeters and still found traces of charcoal. What I think was, when they were burying the body, they had a campfire. And as they were dumping everything back in the hole, they were dumping the ashes from that campfire in with it. This is one of the telltales. What you do is you look for something other than dirt. When you find charcoal, you know, that fire under the ground didn't start by itself. So that hole had been dug before down to 50 centimeters. Whether it's Alan's gravesite, we don't know. We do know that it was a hole dug to 50 centimeters and ashes were thrown into it. And here, talking about I went back, I ended up getting up at like 4 in the morning and riding through the dark and snuck my way back. We really wanted to bring Alan home, or we really wanted to know what, supposedly he's buried at 1 meter deep. So at least excavate down to 1 meter deep. Excavating a gravesite is tedious. You know, I had to do archaeological training. And sometimes the bones can decay in a way that if you're digging too fast, you can dig straight through the remains and never know you'd ever been in them. And now they're scattered everywhere. So there's a process you have to do it right that takes time. So I was there alone with my trenching tool. I didn't have a pick. I'm digging through the dirt. I was able to get down to 50 centimeters. And it became clear that even if I found remains, I wouldn't be able to excavate them, you know, anywhere near proper. So instead of damaging the site, I covered it up and gave the information to DIPA. And that's where Delman and I are interfacing with them. Yeah. I feel pretty good that we should have Alan home in the next year or two. I feel even better that Plan A is not the United States government. Plan A is us. Plan B is the United States government. If they want to step up and beat us to it, hallelujah, saves me the sweat. But we don't have to have that. We're going to know what's at the bottom of this hole. Beyond that, you know, then it becomes a more complex problem. So I like being the person that has Plan A. A lot of MIA families don't have that. My talk tonight, dealing with POWs. Jefferson Barracks POW-MIA Museum. POW. Did we leave POWs behind at the end of the Vietnam War? I won't even have people raise hands. I'll just give you the information that I have. Where the hell is Richard Applehands? That's who we're going to talk about tonight, Richard Applehands. We don't have to find every POW. We only have to find one. Or we only have to have reasonable doubt that we left somebody behind. And then it becomes a moral obligation to our country to go find out why this information looks this way. We had a pretty smart president back in the early 60s, I want you to hear what President Kennedy said about Laos.
I want to make a brief statement about Laos. It is, I think, important for all Americans to understand this difficult and potentially dangerous problem. In my last conversation with General Eisenhower, the day before the inauguration on January 19th, we spent more time on this hard matter than on any other thing. And since then, it has been steadily before the administration as the most immediate of the problems that we found upon taking office.
The most important, immediate, some of the words that he's using. This is a serious part of American history, and we don't even teach it. President Kennedy, his own words, put it in scope, understandable scope, and we don't even teach it. What I'm going to do is build a foundation. I understand this group, this particular group, probably knows much, much more about Laos than we do. I'm going to give a little Laos 101 so we can understand, we're all on the same page to understand the information that comes next. So bear with me. Does this look familiar to anybody in the room? No. The Vietnam War was about Vietnam. But of course, back in the day, it was North and South Vietnam. And over here, right next to Vietnam, is Laos. So, the key term dealing with Laos is the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Everything is about the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And the Ho Chi Minh Trail is not one path, it's a system of paths. Very complex, very developed system. How the bridges were built in a specific way to facilitate a military movement of troops and supplies. Very developed. That's why we couldn't knock it out. It was well developed. What was happening back in 60, 61, 62, when Kennedy saying, we see problems here in Laos, is the North Vietnamese communists were moving supplies into Laos, down the Ho Chi Minh Trail system, and attacking in the south, wherever they wanted, and then they could retreat back into neutral Laos. And, if the South Vietnamese or Americans went after them, they were invading a neutral country, and it just got all ugly. Everything about Laos is the Ho Chi Minh Trail. You can't have one without the other. At the same time in Laos, there's a civil war. The communists, the Pathet Lao, are fighting the Royal Lao. So, a lot of things were going on in Laos. A civil war plus the use of the Ho Chi Minh Trail for the fighting between the North and the South, the Viet Minh, the Viet Cong, and the South Vietnamese. Some of the key dates. May 16, 1961 to July 23, 1962. This is more dealing with the Civil War. America was sending, President Kennedy did send the Green Berets, some, 100, not many, but we did have a military presence in Laos. July 23, 1962, the treaty was signed. 14 countries, including Laos, the Pathet Lao, the North Vietnamese, the South Vietnamese, the Americans, the Chinese, the Russians, the French, a lot of countries get together and say, look, we don't want to escalate this thing. So the North Vietnamese are going to stop using the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and America promises not to put troops on the ground in Laos. We understand there's a civil war going on there. Let them sort it out themselves. The next day, the North Vietnamese kept sending supplies down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The Americans have two choices. This is Kennedy. Put yourself in President Kennedy's position. Well, I can either, one, say, look, they broke the treaty, and declare war in Laos. Escalation, domino, all the tricky words we had back then. So he could call it what it was and end up with the escalation of the war. Or he could look at the fine print of that treaty and say, if I used my CIA, and if we had a secret war in Laos, well, then we would be in compliance with the treaty, no combat troops on the ground, and maybe we could limit the flow of supplies down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. We didn't put so many in the early years. You know, the Laos experts will. Later on in the war, yes, we did some stuff in Laos, but early on, it was more about, they called it armed reconnaissance missions over the Ho Chi Minh Trail. I'm flying along in my F-4 Phantom jet. It's loaded to the hills and bombs. And, oh, I dropped my bombs. Oh. I'm sorry about that. They repeated that same mistake so many times that there were actually more bombs dropped on Laos than was dropped on Nazi Germany. Full-scale war. This is the next 10 years. July 23rd, the signing of the treaty, until April 4th. Armed reconnaissance missions, heavy bombing, combat troops on the ground interdiction, long-range reconnaissance patrols. A lot of stuff going on in Laos. We're talking a full-blown war now. Secret war. I chose April 4th, 1973 for my cutoff date because that's when the last of 54 Operation Homecoming flights landed. We're talking about POWs tonight. Last but not least, American policy. What is American policy today on POWs in Southeast Asia? Official. Da-da-da-da.
The year 1972 saw remarkable progress, as you know. The year 1972, moving into 1973 in January, saw the return of all Americans from Vietnam, all of our combat forces, the return of all of our prisoners of war, the end of the American involvement in Vietnam, a peace agreement which, if adhered to, will mean peace for Vietnam.
When President Nixon said that, he established American policy on POWs in Southeast Asia. And that's the same policy that resides today. Inside DIPA, they cannot look for POWs because POWs don't exist. DIPA has never been where we've been because they have no reason, because there are no POWs. In the 45 years since homecoming, America has never looked for POWs in an active manner. We've gained intelligence, right? Well, if you consider, does anybody know about Fort Apache? No, but not. They had a POW camp where they had a walking K, which was a POW sign. They had USA made out of logs and rocks. They had codes from the pilots. And Ronald Reagan ordered a search mission into it. The bureaucracy got hold to it. It was a terrible mess. That's the only, maybe we'll do something that's ever happened. DIPA has never gone to a POW site and talked to the locals saying, when the POWs were here, what happened to them? They can't ask that question because it's against American policy. Now, if we didn't leave any POWs behind, if we didn't leave Richard Applehands behind, no problem. Let's get on with our lives. Everything starts with the numbers. The numbers, it's like when you balance your checkbook. If you end up with the figure that you're expecting at the end of the day, everything's good, right? If $2,000 is missing, well then everything's bad. So I'm going to have Bobby go over some of the numbers, why people still care about Laos, even though the government says, you just have to understand. The numbers are a great place to start.
Everybody got our windows down? Nice of y'all to have us.
Spring, February, beware.
Total American deaths, Vietnam War is 15,183. A lot of deaths, a lot of souls. Total Americans currently listed as missing in action, MIA from Vietnam War 2016, 910. Total American prisoners of war, POW, returned during Operation Homecoming in 1973, 581, expected 1,200. What happened?
Numbers don't matter.
American POWs captured in Laos from 61 to 62 or released by the Laos in 1963, 4 minor American involvement. 4. 2 years. Intelligence of American POWs captured and held in Laos, 41, 1973. 1961, 1962, 4. Period of 10 years. 41. This is important. Total Americans killed in action, KIA in Laos, 728. Americans still missing in Laos, 304. American POWs captured by the North Vietnam